Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and I want to talk to you about Andrea Yates. And I'm going to express what many people are probably going to be unhappy about. It's a kind of unpopular opinion. And so I want to express this before I start. First of all, this is a disclaimer. I'm not a psychologist, nor am I a psychiatrist, nor have I ever worked in therapy. Um, so, if you have an objection to me discussing my opinions, giving my observations on the Andrea Yates case and her mental state, you might just want to switch us off right now and go somewhere else. But the reason I'm giving this opinion uh, as an expert profiler is because I have spent over 2 decades as a criminal profiler. I have studied criminals, I have studied criminal behavior, psychopathy, and psychosis as part of my understanding of crimes and criminals. I also did work in hospitals for over a decade and a half, and I did that as a medical sign language interpreter. I worked heavily in the emergency room and also in the psych wards. So I've seen a lot, all right? This is my background, and my opinion comes from this. So anyway, here is the first thing I'd like to say. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because after this you might not want to. I'm trying to keep a sense of humor because this is a very difficult subject. But anyway, please do subscribe to the channel. It helps me stay afloat, be able to analyze many crimes. So subscribe, like the video, and share on it in a true crime community if you have one. And also below, you can also join Patreon. And if you join Patreon, you can come to my live shows and be in the chat rooms and be very involved. And also there's a $ in case you do think what I'm offering is important in this particular video, and you can support the channel that way. Okay, that's done and dusted. Now, to what do I think about Andrea Yates? First of all, I think Andrea Yates is a family annihilator. Oh, you say, aren't men the family annihilators? Generally speaking, you are correct. It is heavily men, and we don't seem to have a problem when men annihilate the families, just saying, hey, put them away for life, give them the death penalty. They're psychopaths. We rarely really think of them as possibly having some kind of psychotic problem, and that they couldn't cope, and that they lost their minds, they didn't know what they were doing, and all of this. And why is that? I'm going to explain a lot of the reasons for that. But when it comes to women, we often say, wait, there must be some other reason than she just wanted to get out of the situation she was in, because that is why men do kill off their families. Sometimes they kill their wives and children and then kill themselves because they're failing their midlife crisis. They're not doing well. Their company has gone down, or they lost their job. And they just kill everybody because they don't like the concept of being failures and having everybody point and laugh at them, as they think will be happening. Then there's the men who kill off their wife and children so they can go off with their new girlfriend. That happens too, because they don't like their lives. They feel overwhelmed by that wife and those children. And if only that wife and children were not in their lives, which is why divorce doesn't really work, because when you get divorced, you still have to pay that alimony and that child support, and you still have to see those kids, and you have to have, visitation days and all that. So getting rid of them all eliminates the pressure in your life and allows you to be free. So that's why men do it, but that's also why women would do the same thing. But we rarely think of it that way. Now, why do we give women more of a break? This is supposed to be a society these days. Equal, right? Equal. Men, women, equal. They're supposed to be equal in our judgment of them. They're supposed to be equal in their abilities to cope with things, equal in their abilities to make choices. But oddly, when it comes down to determining whether somebody had the choice to do what they did in a crime, we tend to think of men as bad guys and women as, oh, maybe there's a reason for it. And the men get the full penalty and the women get way less. Even things like Casey Anthony. Why did she get off? The evidence was overwhelming. But there were some people in the jury who thought, well, maybe her father did molest her, which has nothing to do with the crime anyway, but maybe he did. Maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe her narcissistic mother, got in her way and made her do it. It's all kinds of excuses for women. But if a man had killed off that little child, he'd probably be in prison right now. So what is going on here, and what happened in the case of Andrea Yates? All right, first let me read you a little about Andrea Yates, just so you know, in case you haven't ever heard of her or you're just behind and can't remember. Andrea Yates, straight from Wikipedia. Andrea Yates was an American woman from Houston, Texas, who confessed to drowning her 5 children in their bathtub on June 20th, 2001. She killed each one of the 5 children one at a time and then laid them on the bed, one after the other. She had for some time severe postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, and schizophrenia. Now, I'm just going to stop here for a minute. Yes, she had seen psychologists and psychiatrists, I'm not sure which ones, but she had seen them during her childbearing years. I think mostly after the 4th child was born. And this is a diagnosis somebody might have given her along the way. Much of this comes from the defense, because when they got the defense psychiatrist to roll in, of course, the defense psychiatrist has got to come up with the most believable and most forgivable reason why she would kill her 5 children. All right. During her trial, she was represented. Okay, I'm not going to go through all the trial stuff. It gets confusing. Anyway, the first time around, she was found guilty. And then there's a whole legal issue about why all that went south. And she got another trial, and she was found not guilty by reason of insanity. Now, let me tell you what happened in her life and when she supposedly started having these problems. It's interesting to look at who she was before she hooked up with her husband Rusty and before she had the children. She was the youngest of 5 children. She had bulimia during her teenage years, supposedly. She also had depression, and at 17, she spoke to a friend about suicide. I don't know where this information comes from. You have to be very careful with the media. This could be something she told her psychiatrist later on. When I was a teenager, I was bulimic. I wanted to commit suicide. I told my friend I want to commit suicide. I don't know. There has to be some friend. I'd have to find that, information about that friend saying she specifically wanted to kill herself. But if that is true, she had some issues in her high school years. But she did graduate in 1982, and she was class valedictorian, captain of the swim team, and an officer in the National Honor Society. She was doing very well in life. And if she was captain of the swim team, she had a relative physically fit as well. So she was pretty much fine, at least, from the outside. Yates completed a 2-year pre-nursing program at the University of Houston and graduated from the University of Texas Health Center in Houston. All right. Then she worked as a registered nurse. I just want to point out something kind of interesting about this, that sometimes women who have certain issues will choose the nursing profession. It's very fascinating. Many times when you have Munchausen syndrome by proxy, which is when a female psychopath kills one child after the other or harms children to get attention, or sometimes she just claims the children have problems when they don't to get attention. Interesting number of those women actually have worked as in some fashion in the nursing profession. I'm not sure exactly why that is. Maybe it's because it allows them to be in a situation where they're over life and death, or they can get, it's a lot of sympathy rolling around and a lot of, oh, that poor thing, and you're helping that person. I don't know. Of course, that's very, very few of the nurses in the profession, thank God. But, just an interesting aside. All right. So at any rate, she became a registered nurse, and then she worked at the cancer center. In summer 1989, she met Rusty Yates, as an engineer at the she met him at an apartment house. Anyway, they moved in together and got married in 1993. All right. Now, she was doing very well in her life, extremely well as far as her schooling years, and also she was working. She was making her own money. And then she meets him and chooses to marry him. Now, I'll point out the word choose, because I think a lot of times when you see a woman who ends up in a situation of killing her family, they keep saying everybody else made the choices for her. Like she had no sense to herself. Oh, she was pushed around by her family, pushed around by society, pushed around by her boyfriend or husband or whatever, they're the ones that are responsible for her situation. When a lot of times, just like men, women make choices. All right. Not always good choices, mind you. And sometimes those choices make you depressed. And that's a good point I'm going to make later. So anyway, they moved together. They announced they would seek to have as many babies as nature allowed, and bought a 4-bedroom house in Texas. All right. Their first child, Noah, was born in 1994, just before Rusty accepted a job in Florida. And so they relocated to a small trailer in Florida. By the time of the birth of their third child, Paul, they had moved back to Houston and purchased a GMC motorhome. Not sure why they were into motorhomes and trailers, but again, we can't say that that's a cause. I know a lot of people say, oh, well, she was stuffed in a trailer with a bunch of kids. All right. Some trailers are large enough. You're in a warm climate. The kids can go outside a lot. I know there are families who've raised a lot of kids in small places, believe me, and nobody kills off the kids, and it is a choice they make. They could have made other choices, but they didn't. So anyway, following the birth of her fourth child, Luke, Yates became depressed. Now, this is often called postpartum depression. Some people believe postpartum depression is purely chemical, like you have this baby and for some reason your brain goes wacko, your body goes wacko, and then you become highly depressed. And I've had a lot of flack because I tend to believe that the majority of the depression, not that it can't be something else, folks, but the majority of the depression comes because after you have that kid, it's a lot. There's a lot of work involved with children. There's a lot of work involved with babies. It's exhausting. It can be very isolating. You get stuck with the kid. A lot of times we'll see that women, especially in a society where nobody seems to help birthing moms, you know what I mean? Just have your baby and everybody just disappears. In a lot of countries, you're living with other people, other women, so you have help. As soon as your baby is born, all you have to do is you nurse the baby and then you give it to somebody and they take it away and then somebody brings you food. In America, a lot of times you're in an apartment or something, and the husband gets up in the morning, kisses you and walks out the door, leaves a woman with a baby, right? She nurses it or she got a bottle or whatever, and then he's gone and she's alone with the baby and there's nobody around, and it's depressing. It's isolating and it's exhausting, especially if you haven't slept in a long time. I always say that I got saved my first round with my daughter because I kind of had her in a ghetto in Long Beach, California, and my husband went to work. There were so many women at home in the neighborhood because they're all on welfare that there are always people around to visit with, and so they would walk into my apartment and they sit on my couch. They take the baby away from me so I could go back to sleep. I got lucky to be in a situation where I had a lot of company. But a lot of women don't get that. They're very isolated. And also, another thing that's very difficult for a lot of women is they work a job. If you're working a professional job and you're busy in the office, you get up every day, you see people, you're out there you have lots of companionship during the day, and suddenly you have a baby, and all that work life goes away. Everybody is just your whole world that you were doing is missing. And some women say, okay, I'm glad to be home with the baby. I'm just enthralled. I'm good. Other women are like, I can't stand this. I hate this. I want to go back to work and now I'm stuck here and I don't make any money. And the kid is crying all the time. And my husband doesn't understand. And he comes home and then he's like, oh, you've just been working hard all day, honey, and you're like, yeah, me too. Yeah. It's tough. It's really tough after you have a baby. So if you're in a good situation, then you're okay. I mean, you are. But if you're not in a great situation and you feel just this is not what you wanted in the way you thought you wanted it, you can get very depressed, very sad, and very exhausted, and sometimes even very angry. That's where children can be in danger and the person just can't stand that crying anymore. I mean, it's not unreasonable to think you can get very depressed after having a baby. Now, Andrea Yates, she made it through 4 before supposedly she became depressed. And now I'm going to say, now she's got 4 kids. She's not working as a nurse, apparently. So she's taking care of 4 children in her small home. Um, Now, again, she made the choice. She made the choice to get married. She made the choice to have the first baby, the second baby, the third baby, the fourth baby. And now we can throw religion in and say, oh, it's because they had this weird religious ideas and they convinced her to have the babies. Again, she chose the religion. All right. So now she's home. She's depressed. And I get it. Okay. Following the birth of her fourth child, Luke, Yates became depressed. On June 16th, 1999, Rusty found her shaking and chewing her fingers. Okay. I think all of us have done that at some time. I mean, it's like, I can't stand this. The next day, she attempted to commit suicide by overdosing on pills. She was admitted to the hospital and prescribed antidepressants. Okay. First of all, she attempts to commit suicide about 3 times. And let me tell you the difference between actually committing suicide and not actually committing suicide. When you're dead, when you're not. When you want to kill yourself, like 100% want to be dead, you'll be dead. It's not that hard to kill yourself. There's lots of easy ways to do it. What often happens, and I learned this from a lot of my work in hospitals, is you overdose or take too much of a medicine, maybe even not enough to kill you, but it looks good. And you make sure you do it when somebody's going to find you. You don't do it when, you take a whole bottle of pills and then nobody's going to come around for a day, then you'll be dead. That's the way you really should do it. But if you're just trying to get the attention, then you do it when somebody can catch you and get you to the hospital. So it's called attempted suicide, but I call it a cry out for help, a cry for, hey, I've had too much of whatever. And oftentimes, in a marriage situation, it's a cry to the husband to say, see what you're putting me through? I don't want to do this anymore. But instead of getting yourself out of it, you take a kind of a rage attack on whoever is around you to say, I don't have the ability to get myself out. So your fault, you fix it. All right. So she went to the hospital. She got prescribed antidepressants. Something antidepressants, I always believe are good in the short haul because they will make you speedy and you won't be so depressed. It's true. But if you definitely want to have, I believe if you're getting antidepressants, you should be under care of a psychiatrist the whole time. Anyway, it doesn't say she was. So soon after her release, she begged Rusty to let her die. She held up a knife to her neck. Okay, if you want to die, you don't beg your husband to stop you or to let you do it. You do it. And then you let him find you. So again, she's seeking attention. Once again, hospitalized. She was given a cocktail of medications, including Haldol, an antipsychotic drug. Now, I find that interesting. I want to tell you one thing. Unless I can find all the records of everything, I don't know why they gave her things when they gave her things. It doesn't say here she was psychotic. It just says she wanted to kill herself. That's not psychotic. That's depression. Why did she get Haldol? I don't know. Somebody decided it might be a good idea. And then I've seen that in the emergency room. I've seen people chucked at people for almost no good reason at all. That's called poor medical choices there. Not her fault, their fault. She got her Haldol. Her condition improved immediately. Okay, well, you wanted to kill yourself, now you got a Haldol, okay. And she was prescribed it on her release. And then after that, Rusty moved the family to a small house for the sake of her health. Okay, so now she's in a house and she's instead of the trailer. She appeared temporarily stabilized. Okay, again, she got a bigger house. Maybe she's felt better at that moment. Then it says in July 1999, Yates had a nervous breakdown, which culminated in 2 suicide attempts. Okay. Again, attempts. She's not killing herself. She just wants the attention. She wants to say, I'm overwhelmed. I can't stand this life that I have. But she's not found a good way out of it. And she got 2 more psychiatric hospitalizations that summer. She was diagnosed with postpartum psychosis. I don't know where the psychosis part comes in. To me, psychosis is when you lose touch with reality, not when you're pissed off at life. There's a difference between the two things. I mean, if you still know what's going on and you can't stand your life, that's not psychosis. That's severe depression. You haven't lost touch with reality. As a matter of fact, might be very much in touch with reality because you don't like your life. You hate your life. That might be totally realistic. Just don't know how to fix it. All right, then this first psychiatrist, Yates' first psychiatrist, testified that she urged the Andrea and Rusty not to have any more children. Well, yeah, she's already overwhelmed. She says it would guarantee future psychotic depression. Not psychotic depression, just depression, because too many kids. But they went ahead and had another one. Approximately 7 weeks after her discharge. She stopped taking Haldol in March 2000 and gave birth to her daughter in November. And then she seemed to be coping well until the death of her father in March. Okay, so she was off of Haldol. This is interesting. Off of Haldol, she had the fifth baby. It seemed to be okay. Not in psychosis. Not, where's the schizophrenia gone to that they claim she had? I don't know. I mean, they haven't claimed it yet. They claimed that later. And maybe the defense claimed that. But at this point, apparently she's able to function, take care of her children. She's not hearing voices. She's not seeing things that aren't there. She's doing okay. Then her father dies. And, that may be just one more, something, that straw that broke the camel's back. One more person that's not in her life to help her. Yates then stops taking her medication, mutilated herself, which I don't know what that means. Took a knife and went, okay, and read the Bible feverishly. Okay. A lot of people, again, will jump on the religious thing here. Sometimes what you're doing is you're looking for an answer. You're looking for some kind of anything to say, I can deal with this. She stopped feeding Mary. Okay. She became so incapacitated that she required immediate hospitalization. So at this point, she was, I would say, having a mental breakdown. Mental breakdown is not psychosis. A mental breakdown is you just can't handle anything anymore. You just can't deal with it. And she came under the care of Dr. Mohammed Saeed. And she was treated and released. So April 1st, she was treated and released. On May 3rd, she degenerated back into a near catatonic state, whatever that means. I love things that are written and they don't explain what the heck that's supposed to be. And filled the bathtub in the middle of the day. Okay. Oh, God. Who fills up a bathtub in the middle of the day? That's not that weird. But okay, there's supposedly a reason she did this. She would later confess to police that she planned to drown the children that day, but decided against doing it then. Okay. She didn't say she heard voices. She didn't say she was out of touch with reality. She just decided she was going to get rid of those babies that day. That's what she told the police later. She had thought about this before. Okay. She was hospitalized the next day after a scheduled doctor visit. The psychiatrist determined she was probably suicidal and filled the tub to drown herself. So maybe this time she's going to take all the pills and fall asleep in the tub with 5 kids running around. But I don't know. But then again, this is what she told. This is what the psychiatrist says he thought. Okay. Oh, he thought that. It doesn't mean she thought that. It doesn't even mean that it was true if she said that. So you have to be very careful about understanding what's really happening. All right. Now about the murders. At the time of the murders, they were living in Houston. Okay. She continued under Dr. Saeed's care until June 20th, 2001, when Rusty left for work, leaving her alone to watch the children against his instructions to supervise her around the clock. And of course, she was severely depressed. And so he's thinking she shouldn't be left alone with the kids because if she's suicidal, gosh knows, sometimes you're homicidal and suicidal, or just homicidal. Of course, if he thought that, it's kind of strange that she wasn't hospitalized. But anyway, hubby goes to work and leaves her alone. His mother, Dora Yates, had been scheduled by Rusty to arrive an hour later to take over for Andrea. In the space of that hour, Andrea drowned all 5 children, which is interesting. Again, she knew her husband had left, and she knew her mother-in-law was coming. Was her mother or mother-in-law? Mother-in-law was coming in an hour. She only had so much time to work with. Again, not a sign of psychosis. This is a sign of planning, realistically knowing when you should do something and when you shouldn't, and when you can get away with it. All right. Now, she later confessed, after confessing to drowning children, she told the doctor, this is Michael Wellner, and I'm going to do a whole thing that Michael Wellner said that how many reasons that he doesn't think she was insane, that she knew what she was doing. She said she waited for Rusty to leave for work that morning before filling the bathtub because she knew he would have prevented her from harming them. After the murder, police found the family dog locked up. Normally it ran free. And so when he left the house that morning, led the psychiatrist to allege she had locked the cage to prevent her from interfering with her killing the children one by one. Okay, now, so that's the basics of it. So was she insane when she killed these children? Now, I want to show you some things that are said. Now, she's still institutionalized, and there was this some comments from the psychiatrist at the place she was at. Now, let's see what they have to say here. All right, she's been in this facility, and this is Dr. Fabian. You can't talk too much about her, but her attorney will talk for the doctor, sort of. Like many patients here, Yates was found not guilty by reason of insanity, a defense raised in only about 1% of felony cases and successful in only about 1/4 of them. Very, 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 very rare that you can plead insanity and you get away with that plea. Now, Dr. Fabian says another part of the treatment for patients as they progress is realizing the consequences of their actions. The court finding someone not responsible is very different than someone forgiving themselves for the action, says Dr. Fabian. But here's the interesting statement. When asked if Yates has shown remorse, Parnham added, she obviously is very aware and is impacted tremendously by what happened. Didn't say she had any remorse. It just said she knew what she had done. But she knew what she had done when she called the police and said, I killed me. She called the police and said she'd done it. And she said, when am I going to go to trial? She knew exactly what she did. The problem is she still shows no remorse for it. Why? Because maybe she's happy she did it. That's the problem. And that is not a matter of psychosis. That's a matter of psychopathy. All right, let me go on. Okay, so now the doctor says this. Here it's about treatment. I believe it's not responsible to punish someone for doing something they didn't know was wrong in a setting where they couldn't control their actions. Okay, you can't punish somebody for doing something they didn't know was wrong, and she knew it was wrong. That's why she made sure the husband was out, so she wouldn't get stopped. She knew it was wrong, and that she couldn't control her actions. Well, she could control them because she knew when to do it, so she would get away with it. She was premeditatedly doing this. That is not a sign of somebody who's gone bonkers and doesn't know what they're doing and thinks that there's voices in their head telling them to do things. And believe you me, I've worked in enough psych wards to know the difference between what I see as psychopathy and what I see as psychosis or psychotic person. For example, I interpreted for one woman who was clearly psychotic. One time we went in to talk to the doctor, and I was interpreting sign language. And she's sitting next to me here, and I'm sitting here, and the doctor's in front of me. And she starts signing, and the doctor says, what is she saying? And I'm like, well, first of all, she's not talking to you. She's talking to the person over there who wasn't there. She's talking to the invisible people. And she did this quite often. She would have long conversations with them and get very angry about many things because she thought they were there talking to her. She saw them. That's psychotic. Another evidence of being psychotic is the language that a psychotic person uses as opposed to a psychopathic person or a person who is completely in touch with reality. They will speak in a way that makes sense. Andrea Yates did that. She spoke in a way that made sense. She wasn't all garbly and all kinds of weird stuff. When I was interpreting for certain people with schizophrenia at the hospital, the doctors would say, okay, ask her what's wrong. And then the person, she'd be signing away. And I'm not interpreting. And they're like, why aren't you interpreting? I said, I have no idea what she's saying. Nothing makes sense. Let me show you how that sounds. I've received many, many emails from a particular person, and many, like over 100, almost 200 now. This is an excerpt from one of the emails. Just a note, the table of 3 isn't perfect, nor is life, but the tomboy Venus mixture gets the harshest of them all. This is what we had in our Welsh last case, Muriel. Note the sweet papers near her, all of that symbols the Welsh army officer that 4F'd life because of her, aka the wife that didn't have the sexy side of the Lolita that keeps it going, and like our Gina de Jesus, just knows how to hide and seduce until found. Without that sexy side, gross brutality abides. So we have still yet not a perfect study, albeit my memory was at 2 a.m. calling the dogs in 05. But mystery moves and hides in ways of military falls and rise, and all around me here in Eastport. Visit sometime, you might hear the drums of St. Andrews alongside. My beautiful magical moment in a ride, me and her in the stairway. We shall survive. It was a dream scene. I failed to tell people, but Robert Stack competes in time. Did you understand any of that? That's what I have to interpret. I'm like, because they're not complete sentences. They're thoughts that are completely out of order, that don't make any sense except to maybe the person who's thinking them. That's psychotic. All right, now let me show you psychopathic. This is Dennis Nils. Yes, Nilsson. Oh, sorry, this is Nilsson. This is serial killer. I think he's a UK serial killer. He wrote this letter about why he was compelled to kill his victims and attempt to murder a further 8 over a 5-year period. Listen to what he says. I have felt that since my teenage days that I am a creative psychopath. Since I have committed 15 killings and 8 attempted killings, I feel able to go further on this self-assessment. In times of acute emotional pressure and under the triggering influence of spirits, i.e. alcohol, usually dormant mental forces have been released, which have made mine the actions of a destructive psychopath. Did you understand that? Yes, you did. I've had psychopaths, serial killers, write me from prison. All of them clear as a bell. It's like, Dear Pat. Don't call me that. Dear Pat, hi, I've seen you on, I read your book or whatever, and I'd like to tell you about my situation. I can read everything they say. It's perfectly clear. But when I get letters from psychotic people, none of it makes sense. And then they also write very strangely, and they do a lot of capitalizing, and they write in the borders of the envelopes, and they write on the back of the envelope, and sometimes it's 10 pages and all garble. That's psychotic. What I find interesting is I'm not hearing anything or I'm reading anything where she appeared psychotic on a daily basis to her friends, to her family, to people at the church. They're saying, my God, that woman's making no sense. Get those kids away from her. Nobody's saying that. She seems to be able to go around pretty well. Now, there's a difference between being psychotic and having certain ideations, because you can be mentally disturbed. Clearly, she was mentally disturbed. So are serial killers. Very mentally disturbed. They have ideations. I really want to kill women. I really want to kill men. I really want to kill children. I really want to rape and torture them. That is a sick ideation, but they're not insane according to the law. And if you take them and try to, treat them, really it doesn't fix them, because they have no remorse and they don't feel what they did. They'll say, oh yeah, that was wrong, but they don't mean it, because they like what they did. They like where they are without, if they want to do those things. So I don't hear that she is like buzzing around, acting very schizophrenic. I don't hear that she's unable to function. And the majority of times, I only see moments when she gets frustrated and attempts suicide, and then goes and gets some medication and gets some help to get out of this situation she doesn't seem to like. Now, let's look at what the doctor said, the psychiatrist said. And he gave these, here's as many reasons. Oh my gosh, he's got so many of them. I'm just going to run through them and explain what I agree with and what I might not, and how I think it plays out. Reasons why Dr. Wellner thinks Andrea knew right from wrong. She called the police almost immediately after drowning the last child. That's because her mother-in-law was coming over, so she was going to find that anyway. She resisted 911's efforts to coax into explaining what happened, as if ashamed. She didn't want to say what happened. Now, if she's totally psychotic, she would say something like, there were devils in the children, and they came after me. And she would do that kind of stuff. But she didn't even do that kind of stuff. Called Rusty and told him to come home immediately without explaining why it was urgent. Recognize the need for police involvement, because the police is who you call when you've done something wrong. If you're psychotic, you don't think you did anything wrong anyway. So why are you taking me away? Why? Called the police after drowning the children because mother-in-law was coming over. Okay. She expressed profound guilt the next day. Yeah, but interesting enough, she doesn't seem to be when she's in the mental institution, she doesn't seem to have much guilt there. So maybe she just needed to do that to make it look like she felt bad. I don't know. Thought she needed to be punished. Said she didn't want to be the one to tell Rusty. Okay. No confusion or protest about being taken into custody. Asked when the trial would be. Anticipated being punished. Said she was prepared to go to hell for what she had done. Maybe because she had two choices in her mind: get stuck with all these kids, or get rid of them and then take the punishment. And that's a choice. Here. At first, Yates told no one of the visions as if she knew they were bad, or maybe they didn't exist. Because once you've done the bad thing, there are serial killers, like Son of Sam. He claimed that the dog made him do it, that somehow the devil was in the dog and the dog made him do it. There have been a number of serial killers that once they're caught, then they go, oh yeah, I have this mental problem. And they'll claim all kinds of things in order to get off of death penalty or whatever. Sometimes they'll even pretend they're crazy. That's been done. I remember this guy who, after I think he killed his wife, and then he ripped all his clothes off and ran around naked in the neighborhood because that would make him look crazy. So let's go on. She made it a point to act normally the morning of the crime. Well, she probably acted normal because she had the ability to act normal. This, again, is a sign that that's not a psychotic state. So you don't have that ability. If you're in psychosis, you're in psychosis. You don't get up and get the kids, get up and make breakfast for your husband. And you're perfectly normal. She was perfectly normal. That's the point. She wasn't in a psychotic state. Yates did not talk about her mood or ideas as not to arouse any suspicious feelings from her husband, Rusty, who attentively helped with taking care of the children each morning. Okay, so Rusty's off. Everybody says Rusty's a horrible guy, and maybe he had his own issues. But supposedly he helped her in the mornings get the kids ready. So, if she again was psychotic, she wouldn't be able to go through the routines very well because she'd be completely off her nut and he'd be going, what the heck's wrong with you? She'd lock the dog away. After she drowned the children, she concealed the dead bodies from the other children so they wouldn't freak out and maybe run out of the house and screaming. Now, this is interesting. She said, I disagree with him on 19. She killed eldest son Noah last because as the strongest and largest, he would have disrupted the attacks. I don't understand that, because actually you'd kill him first so he wouldn't interrupt the other ones. Because once he's dead, then it's easy to kill the younger children. Unless I think she might have thought she wasn't going to be successful killing him. In other words, he was bigger. He was, 8? He's bigger and he could fight. Maybe she thought he would fight her off and then run to the neighbor's house screaming, Mommy's trying to kill us. Maybe, she just, she'll just sneak the other kids in, drown them quickly, and then get him at the end. That's, I think, happened. Again, very premeditated. At one point, she made up her mind to kill the children, but held back and went back to sleep because Rusty was there. Again, psychotic people don't care who's there, because they don't know what's happening. Let's see. So this is interesting. She had visions supposedly in 1994 about stabbing Noah, which were distressing. A 1994 image of stabbing Noah prompted her to take measures to quell the thoughts. And then 1999, I guess, vision returned. She was again distressed. This is interesting. I don't know when these supposed distressing visions came to her. This is something she said after the fact, or after she was arrested and she was in therapy. Then did she say, "Oh, I had visions of killing him for years"? Again, visions too. I don't understand the word visions. A vision is something where you don't have control over you're seeing things in your head, but you can visualize killing your kids, saying, "Oh, I could take that kid and kill him, and I won't have to deal with him anymore. It's getting so obnoxious." That doesn't really, does it distress you? Well, I guess if you thought, wow, I'm going to commit homicide, that's probably not a good thing. Yeah, okay. I guess that could distress her. But visions, I don't know, is a sign of psychotic, any psychotic stuff. It's just we all have visions of stuff. You think about things. She said when she feared acting on her vision, she called Rusty home from work saying she needed help. That's what she claims. When the urge to stab Noah became overpowering, she ingested an entire bottle of trazodone, her psychoactive medication, to keep her from acting on it. So she says. And again, is that one of these attempted suicides when somebody was there to catch her. She opted to attempt suicide in June 1999 to prevent herself from acting on the urge to kill Noah. Now, mind you, interesting right here. See, she talks about all this killing of Noah. Obviously, she never told any psychiatrist this problem before she killed them. So if she had told the psychiatrist she was going to kill her children, I think we would have a different situation, wouldn't we? So that's nothing that she ever told anybody. So I think that may be part of the defense more than I think that maybe she created those thoughts later for her defense. Let's see. She did not tell anybody about homicidal urges for months. Well, I guess not. Okay, let me see where I'm at here. Let's see. Hold on a second. Let me figure out where I'm at. All right, there we go. There's a few more. It's amazing how many you came up with. If she maintained the idea not to speak about her visions in order to prevent her from coming to fruition, this avoidance would also demonstrate awareness of the wrongfulness. That is true, although we don't even know she had these visions. Oh, wait a minute. Now she claims she told the doctors about her homicidal visions in 1999, but still would not tell her family. Really? Okay. I would like to see proof of that. All right. Yates said Rusty would have been very upset and scared in 1999 if he told her about wanting to stab Noah. Well, you think so? Yeah, I guess so. Again, if you're psychotic, you might think that it's perfectly fine for Rusty to know that the demons are telling you to kill him. In 2001, Yates began to formulate her plan for drowning the children. She never told Rusty even of the motivation, let alone the action. She formulated a plan. This didn't happen like just something came in her. This is a plan. It's called premeditated homicide. Oh, my goodness. Concealed the plan from her psychotherapist, despite great trust. Concealed the plan from her priest, despite the trust in him. She wanted to do it. If you're psychotic and your mind is all over the place and you're seeing things and stuff like that, yeah, it's hard to hide things from anybody. You got a little blabbermouthy, and you just say all these things that are happening, especially become very paranoid. And that's like, yeah, I'm not buying it. And then she concealed it from her priest's wife, in spite of also being very open, having an open and private communication. And in 2001, she concealed it from friends who she confided secrets to. And now she concealed it from her best friend, despite having a long, loyal relationship. And she concealed it from her husband and from her pediatrician and from her gynecologist. She was pretty good at concealing things, wasn't she? Very, very good. Didn't tell anybody. Nobody noticed. Nobody noticed her being in psychosis. Nobody, including, psychosis is not something you can just, only have once, just one little time. And then, you're perfectly fine for 6 months. And then, so you don't tell anybody, but then you just think about it again. It doesn't work like that. Stated she knew others in the Yates home would have stopped her from killing the children. Yeah, you think so? She knew that what she was doing was wrong. And recognized her therapist would act to protect the children, refer her to Child Protective Services, and remove the children from her home. She knew she was that sick. She could have gotten help. She could have, but she didn't want to. She didn't want the help. She wanted the kids gone. Recognized her psychiatrist would hospitalize her. She told him, obscured the motives behind her actions. The motives, in my opinion, were that she was tired of dealing with them, but she didn't want to deal with. If you go into the social welfare system and all that, you still have to deal with everybody. Restrained herself from acting on previous visions because she felt it was wrong. Okay, let's see. And there's a few more here. Almost done. Knew Rusty would have stopped her. Describes having to actively keep her feelings in check at the time of the crime. Anticipated divorce in the aftermath. Yeah, I think. Her reaction to decrease the children's resistance by removing the bath mat demonstrates awareness that children believed it to be wrong as well. Raised the issue of Satan for the first time when she was coming to terms with what happened. Wait, only then is Satan involved? It wasn't, wasn't before? Okay. Let's see, where am I at? Okay, not that one, not that one. Okay. Her feeling that Mary, because she was a girl, was more disposable than the other children who could have been saved. Okay, so she is supposedly, um, it doesn't say it here. Supposedly, the claim was uh, that she thought she couldn't save the children. She was a crappy mother, and she couldn't save the children from like eternal doom because she would make them a bunch of lousy people. So she killed them instead. If she's never expressed that to other people, I don't know that that isn't a defense. That sounds like, okay, see, it was my religious stuff that made me do it. I knew Rusty would be unhappy, did not want her mother-in-law to see what had happened, minimized the significance of the killings when she told Rusty they were hurt, not surprised to see her husband and mother-in-law distraught. Let's see, ambivalence at the time of the crime. In other words, she wasn't all that bent out of shape about what she did. Said she possibly would have done it another day, meaning she did not know, meaning she knew she did not have to. So she could have waited if the day wasn't the good day. And she wouldn't have done it if her mother-in-law had been there, and she didn't. Okay, so that's, let's see, there's a couple more here. Let's talk about all the time she restrained herself. She restrained herself when she lacked opportunity because somebody would stop her, or when she wasn't ready yet. Restrained herself from acting even when she hallucinated. Really? Okay. I'm not sure about that hallucinating thing. Restrained herself even when she felt she was tormented by Satan. So she says. Restrained herself when the children are most upsetting. Restrained herself through any impulse to get a knife. Restrained herself from telling anyone, even when she is being treated. Not surprised to hear a radio talk show express outrage over her actions. Okay, that's all of his stuff. It's a lot of it. But that's a psychiatrist. So I want to put that out there. So, I'm not the only one who says, hey, she knew what she was doing. She did. She knew what she was doing. She planned this. This was a premeditated mass murder of her children, which is what a family annihilator does. They usually plan it and then kill all the people they want to kill. It may well be that she didn't kill her husband because he was too much work. He's big, and she didn't have access to a gun or something, but she killed the smaller ones, which she could do. In my opinion, the reason that nobody knew about this and nobody thought she was to this level, because they did not see her in psychosis. They did not see her as a schizophrenic. Only when she went in for these suicide attempts did these issues come up, apparently. And after she was arrested, then the defense psychiatrist came in and said, she's the sickest person I've ever seen. And now she can tell her story, and she can be encouraged by the defense psychiatrist to say things that will help her defense. So now she did get convicted. I mean, she's got convicted once, and then now she's just not guilty by reason of insanity, which wasn't proven. Again, she knew what she was doing, and she was not. She knew what the circumstances were. She was clear about how, when, where she would do this. That's not insanity. I'm sorry, folks. It's not. And it's not even postpartum psychosis, because, first of all, this had been a while since a child had been born. She was stuck home with 5 children. I definitely think she was depressed. I don't object to that at all. I think she hated her life. I think she might have been angry with her husband for having those babies with her, saying we should have more babies, and she went along with it, and now she was stuck, and she didn't like it, and she decided she was going to get out of it. Maybe she did think she was a bad mother because she was sick of the children. Maybe she thought the children would be better off if they were dead now than she would be their mother for whatever. That's a choice, though. That's not unrealistic. Again, it's not unrealistic to think she's going to be a crappy mother and their family's going to break apart and all this kind of stuff. That's realism. And so I believe, I look at whether I could call her that she had any level of psychopathy. I don't know that I would call her one, but I wouldn't call her psychotic either. She might have had a high level of narcissism that she thought about. She put herself in these situations because she liked attention. She liked attention in her school and in her jobs, and then to get married and have lots of kiddies. And then it overwhelmed her, and it wasn't to her liking. So she decided she could get rid of them, and then she'll get a better sort of attention. Because once she got into that mental institution. Apparently, she's pretty happy there. She likes to do little arts and crafts projects and things like that, and she's got a lot of attention, and she doesn't seem to be terribly unhappy because maybe she's perfectly content not having those children around and getting sympathy. Now she gets a lot of sympathy, a tremendous amount of sympathy for, for not being able to help herself because of the psychosis and having to live with the fact she's killed 5 of her children. Now she's getting tremendous sympathy. So maybe it worked out for her, and maybe that is a level of psychopathy. So that's my thoughts on this case. I think I know it's unusual, but somebody had asked me about it, and if you know me, I'm willing to state my case, regardless of whether it brings me popularity or not. But I do believe she was not insane. She was a family annihilator, and that we ought to start not putting women on a different level than men. Women make choices too, and she made hers. So thank you very much for listening to me if you've made it through to the end here. And again, subscribe to the channel and check out Patreon below, and hopefully I'll be able to bring you more interesting analyses of other cases. And I show up usually 2 or 3 times a week. So check out my playlist, because I have a lot of cases on the playlist which you might really enjoy. Bye.